Okay, guys, so once you got your value scale shaded in, the next step is to get your sphere. So you're going to want to create a box first. Just draw yourself, use some straight edge of some kind, draw yourself out of the box, and then you're going to need something round. You don't have to have anything fancy, just a cup, something about roughly this big. Leave a little space at the bottom, and kind of try to make it more on the right than the left so you have room for a shadow. Trace around your shape, and you got your sphere started. You're going to need one more thing, and it's a table, the edge of the table in the background. So just about in the center, go ahead and draw a line behind your sphere. Okay, so you get this set up. I don't really need you to finish the entire sphere. I'd like you to get started on it, but I don't really want you to finish it. One mistake is that people think they only really need to shade the sphere, but really it's the background that gives the sphere a lot more character and a lot more life. So it's always good to kind of like turn your paper different directions when you're shading, because it's a lot of times easier. One thing, you can go ahead and start shading the background, and you're going to probably shade the background roughly about like 6 or 7 on your value scale. Pretty close to dark, but not as dark as you can make it. You're using the side of your pencil. If you try to use a mechanical pencil for this, it's not going to be good. It's going to be hard to do it with a mechanical pencil. It can be done, but it's hard. It's usually not as good. This is a whole lot faster and easier. And you're just trying to lay down some shade right up to the edges of the box. Fill it all the way in, right up to the edges. This takes time. That's the thing about art. It takes time. It's not something that just happens really fast. So a lot of people get over carried away with their blending when they start shading. Um, Blending is not nearly as important as people sometimes make it out to be. So this kind of stuff, you can do a little bit of that, but you don't need to go like, you don't want to smudge it. You don't want to blur it out. You just want to kind of like lightly kind of blur it together a little bit, help smooth it out a little bit. But don't overdo that. You shouldn't be like pushing the paper that hard. Try to make your edges disappear. You want your edges to kind of just go away. You want that shade to become, you want that shade to override the edge. If you can still see a line, keep shading until the line becomes part of the shade. Okay, just about done. Okay, next step, I need to work on this area just a little bit more, and I'll go back to that area and work on that, smooth out some more. Next step is going to be to go ahead and start shading the sphere. We need to kind of very, very lightly sort of identify, and I mean just super lightly, try to identify the highlight area. The highlight area is where there's very little shading. It's actually going to be just totally white. So inside that circle I just kind of drew on right there, kind of on top, there's not going to be any shading. So that area is called the highlight. Now, we're going to also identify a kind of another area, and I'm just going to really lightly kind of draw on almost like sort of a crescent moon shape. And these are just guides. I'm just going to lightly draw that on, and I'm going to put an arrow kind of pointing away from there, going this way. That's going to be our shadow. Okay, now, in between the shadow and the highlight, you're going to have midtones. What we want to try to do is create a smooth change from shadow to midtones to highlights. We don't want black, gray, white. We want a smooth change across there. The farther I start getting away from that shadow area, the more I start lightening up. Less pressure. See this white edge I'm leaving right here? I'm not going to fill that in because that has me too. That's called reflected light. That's light bouncing off the table and reflecting black back onto the sphere, and we're going to leave that mostly just white. See how I'm shading with the curve? I don't change, like I don't shade flat, I don't shade up and down, I shade with the curve of the shape, with the curve of the sphere. I'm always following that curvy pattern. It's probably easiest to turn your shape as you work on it. Keep it turning so that you have the easiest way of shading it. Now, as I get farther from the shadow, that's when I start using less and less pressure. And it's going to get a lot faster as I get closer to this highlight area. And remember, you're not really shading in the highlight area. Always follow this curve. This side over here, you're not going to have very much reflected light. That reflected light gets farther away. There's not going to be very much of it. You're not going to have reflected light up here either. So you've got to have the edge of the sphere darker than the background, otherwise it wouldn't show up. You're not going to get reflected light until it gets down closer to the actual table, like about there. It's okay to get outside of the lines a little bit. You just go back in, clean them up a little bit with your eraser. And then you have to just take a lot of time to sit and smooth this stuff out back and forth. You can smooth it out a little bit with your finger, but again, don't get it all blurry. You don't want to blur it all together. You just want to kind of blur the general areas together that need to be about the same. final step, once you get this all finished out, is to shade the table. You're going to start down here at the bottom and just shade dark to light. So nice smooth change. Start dark, and as you get farther away from there, get lighter. The back of the table should be left totally white. One last thing, you need a cast shadow. And a lot of people struggle with drawing the shadow. It's going to kind of look like a flattened out ball, more like an oval kind of underneath this ball. Kind of like a stretched out circle. And then that's going to be shaded in very dark. Right up to the edges. You want to be as accurate as possible here. You want that line to become the shade on the ball, or the shade on the table, the shadow shade. You can label this one cast shadow. Be as accurate as possible. Try to be really sharp with this shadow. It wouldn't have too smooth of an edge because the shadow is so close to the object that's making it. It's going to be a pretty sharp shadow. And you'll have to do some blurring, get that all smoothed out. Okay, now I need to work on this some more. It needs definitely to be cleaned up a little bit. It needs to be sharper. I got to work on these edges a little bit. I got to work on this line a little bit. I'm still not done with the table. I'm still not smoothed that out. That's the basics. I've been working now for about 10 minutes. So probably spend another 10 minutes on this, kind of cleaning it up, blending it, making it better, and then I would be done. All right, so we'll finish this up. Get a start on this. Maybe you don't have it all the way finished, but get a start on it. We'll finish it in class Monday and Tuesday. See you guys.